So I think there's more than one issue that affects the respiratory health of a patient with SMA. And I think the important thing that I've learned is, and that's been reinforced time and time again, is that a person is more than a diagnosis and more than one organ system. And I think that this is something that has to be, I think that's emerging in terms of Western medicines versus like medicines that have a more holistic approach, meaning that there's a mind-body connection, and you're a body, you're not one organ system. And because of that, changes or effects in one organ system will definitely affect another organ system. So when we think about SMA, the hallmark issues are weakness in your nerve muscle system, but in reality that affects your breathing. And other organ systems also lead into that. And so you can have further negative effects on your lung health if you have issues such as aspiration, which is either food or liquid or your saliva going basically into the wrong system. So it should be that when we swallow, that whatever we swallow goes into our esophagus, which is our food tube, and goes to our GI tract. But unfortunately, individuals with SMA, different types of SMA and at different times, will have what we call bulbar dysfunction. So the muscles in their throat, in their throat area, roughly speaking, don't coordinate as well because they're weak, and they aren't as tightly regulated as it's supposed to be. So that there's more of a potential that contents from your mouth are going to end up actually in your lungs, and that is dependent on on certain conditions. Like this may occur only when you're sick, or it may occur only when you drink water versus when you drink a smoothie, or only occurs when you eat crackers versus when you eat fruit. So it can be, and it can also be not an issue when you're young, and it becomes more of an issue when you become older. So it's important to know about these issues so that you can be preventative about it and can make changes that are right for you, so that if these issues were to occur, you can still maintain the quality of life you want, and at the same time not have what we call soilage of the lungs. Because when you have SMA, your lung tissues themselves, because the lung system in terms of there's lung tubes and lung airways. In SMA, it should be that the lung tubes and the lung airways are not affected. It's the muscles that control the breathing in the rib cage that are affected. But over time, if you aspirate or you have reflux and that leads to aspiration, that can cause actual inflammation and damage to the lungs themselves. And then the issue with aspiration is it's a primal reflex that we have, a gag reflex, so that we can protect our airway. So that if you swallow wrong, you have a spontaneous reflex to protect yourself. That being said, there's a wide variation in people who don't have SMA, that they have a strong gag reflex and those who don't. But when you have a strong gag reflex, then that's a cue, an important cue from your body, that something is not supposed to happen. And a lot of times what happens with individuals with SMA is that they have what we call silent aspiration, so that they don't even know that it's occurring. And the only reason they know it's occurring if it's like a big dramatic effect. Or a lot of times what we see is a lot of small silent aspiration, and it slowly accumulates over time to some kind of peak amount of damage. And then that results in a respiratory issue that has to be immediately addressed. We have as humans, we have a natural protective instinct, which is called our gag reflex. And this gag reflex is a warning system, a cue to us that something's going on that should not be happening. And so in individuals who don't have a chronic medical condition, there's a range from individuals who have a very strong gag reflex to those who don't. But the importance of the gag reflex is it's a very noticeable way for us as an individual and for those around us to know when we're having a problem with our swallowing. Unfortunately, there are times where individuals with SMA can, at different stages of their life, develop a decreased gag reflex. so that not only themselves but their caregivers may not know that they're having what we call silent aspiration. And this silent aspiration can be very noticeable in an acute setting if they had what we call a major aspirational event, which usually leads to an acute respiratory compromise. Or what we more often see is silent aspiration that's occurring that builds up over time to a point where then suddenly they develop a respiratory issue that is more abrupt. And so hopefully my goal is to be able to identify, to let family and individuals know about the risk of aspiration and either definitely educate them, and sometimes to do either studies or give them ideas or clues to look for so that they're aware of the aspiration being a risk and when an intervention needs to be done.